very much for your support, and I apologize for this video getting at you, this recording getting you a little later than usual. It's having some serious issues with dumping this audio down to an MP3. The platform that I used to record it used to give it to me on MP3, and now it's all changed, and the conversion software I have is a nightmare. So I apologize for not having this earlier, but you still have it. You still get it first. This is a show we recently did, Pascal and I, with a history professor we met through Jean Bajlan at his university, Missouri State University, that had done some really interesting work writing about the 1619 Project, which is definitely a project that Pascal and I have some issues with. We take some issues with that project. And as this show has grown, attention grows when your show grows, right? And I'm not going to lie, sometimes you're not ready for the level of negative attention that you get. And I don't mean like silly negative, you suck attention. I mean definitely like people really trying to troll a subject. And one thing I like to do to make the live stream a little more interactive is the chat is placed where the guests can see it. And as this troll had invaded the chat, it totally messed with the vibe of the show, and it got to be to where the professor and Pascal just kind of left whatever we were, and it was on topic to what we were talking about. The person was kind of in line with the 1619 Project and looking at it as it was some sort of gospel, centering the birth of the nation around the first slave ship. So the show, I wouldn't say derailed. It just went in a way that we did not plan it to go. But and I don't think the troll thought that we were going to go at him as hard as we did. But this one is pretty good to me because you see Pascal get really fiery and just kind of demolish this person to the point where they just don't have anything else to say. We now have a moderator for the chat. Some things are changing as the show is growing, and for the better. But this was a fun show. People had asked to hear this on the podcast version, so here it is. And I'm not going to talk too long. I talk too much with these. I will say, if you'd like to see these things and be a part of them, there are links in the description wherever you're watching or listening to this to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and Thursday 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we do a live stream. And we cover a variety of topics, as you can imagine if you are a listener of this show. And Saturday, we do the fully free show, is what we're going to start calling Saturday, the fully free show, where we will go anywhere from 2.5 to 5 hours with a plethora of guests, to say the least. So, thank you again for all the patron support we are getting. It is definitely helping the show grow, helping the production quality of the show. Thank you for all the YouTube subscribers. As the show is growing, I hope you guys are seeing the quality of the show get better. So I will leave now, and here is our episode about the 1619 Project with Professor John Graham.
day. Classes are forming, so call right now.
Run, boy, run, no, the battery will get you. Run, boy, run, no, it's almost day. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do when we find you? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do when we find you? Run, boy, run, no, the battery will get you. Run, boy, run, no, you gotta get away. Run, boy, run, no, the battery will get you. Run, boy, run, no, it's almost day. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do when we find you? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do when we find you? Run away.
Runaway tonight at 10:30.
Do you know someone of questionable racial identity? A neighbor? Someone at work? Contact the Office of Racial Identity at 1-800-555-PASS. You might be eligible for a cash reward.
That's right. Passing.
Hello, everyone. Don't be alarmed at those fake ads. That was from the mockumentary movie Confederate States of America. It's shot like a Ken Burns documentary in an alternate world where the South won the Civil War. I showed that clip because today we're going to actually be talking about something I didn't think was that controversial still, but the 1619 project that says this country was started with slavery. So let me bring on my co-host, Pascal Robert.
My man, Jason Miles. How are you living?
You know what's funny, man? So I was reading the initial essay, the first essay in the 1619 project. I actually read it when it came out, and I remember all the fanfare that the woman was in, Nicole Hannah-Jones was getting when this thing came. It was like, would you say this is part of the Great Awokening?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is a major part of the Great Awakening. Very important.
And thank you guys. So we got the 1,000 subs. Thank you guys so much for sharing the show. We got our 1,000 subs on YouTube. We were very excited, thinking that we could all of a sudden get into the monetization, and then I found out they were like, no, we still have to approve the 1,000 people that are subscribing to your channel, and that process could take up to a month. So, but let's bring on our guest for today. And I want to say a shout out to Jean Bajlan for suggesting this gentleman. His name is John Graham. He is a professor at Missouri State University. His research and teaching interests focus on the political, social, and cultural consequences of U.S. expansion during the 19th and 20th centuries. His current research agenda examines the process of indigenous identity formation under the pressures of settler colonialism, as well as the process by which the United States incorporated frontier and borderland regions. His name is Professor John Graham. Thank you.
Hey guys, glad to be here. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Someone says we should pretend to be fascist if we want faster monetization. That's sad but true. Yeah, I saw that Steven Crowder thing today where he went off on the farmers getting the money. We'll talk about that later, but maybe we'll talk about that later. There's enough shows that love talking on that guy. But we want to get into the 1619 project. Some people call it ahistorical because it seems to center slavery as a uniquely American institution. And I wish I could share the Facebook chat we were having with Professor Graham beforehand. Sometimes I wish I could share a lot of these Facebook chats with you guys. I was just watching. If you want to know, I'll be honest, Professor Graham and Pascal. The reason why I was so quiet when you guys were back and forth, I was doing shit for the show, but I was reading a very interesting conversation you guys were having about this particular project, and Professor Graham had actually written on it, and you kind of juxtaposed it to the 1776 project that the Trump administration had trotted out to kind of is combat the right word? The 1619 project?
Yes. If you can call a tantrum being combative, then I guess so.
And of course, the 1776 project was centered in some very serious American exceptionalism. Pascal, what was your take on the 1619 project?
My take on the 1619 project was that it was trying to use a racial grievance discourse to create a pessimistic form of American exceptionalism that I thought was kind of ahistorical. And what I mean by that is that the 1619 project literally says, and these are the words of Nicole Hannah-Jones, that America as a country was born in a form of racism and slavery that existed nowhere else in the world. And that's patently false, because for 100 years before the American slave plantation system even starts, there's slavery in the Caribbean, there's slavery in Brazil, and only 4% of the Africans that come to North America in bondage, only 4% of them come to North America. Only 4%. The supermajority of them go to Brazil and the Caribbean, where you had, the sugarcane plantation economy that was profoundly rigorous and deadly, and did not even allow the type of life longevity that the North American plantation slave experiment allowed. So again, my position is not to play like, who suffered more, but the larger point I'm trying to share is that there's no question that slavery and the plantation economy was central to America's economic development. But to make that as if it's only an American phenomenon is just fundamentally false. That's the nature of settler colonialism, slavery, land exploitation, genocide, is the story of how North and South America come to be. Barring Canada that didn't have plantation slavery, but this is the reality of the Western Hemisphere.
Let me get and your take, Dr. Graham.
I think Pascal nails it. You look at this essay, and it seems to be in conversation with, with popular cultural voices that basically use the "everyone was doing it" defense, right? Slavery has always existed; it's kind of been everywhere. And so to focus so much of the U.S. experience on slavery is inappropriate because, again, kind of everybody was doing it. But as I think Pascal makes clear, the problem is that she overstates her case, right? I mean, American slavery is different in really important ways from, say, Greco-Roman slavery or whatever. But it's part of this larger historical phenomenon of New World slavery. It is unique in world history in the sense that it's perpetual, it's race-based, it's inheritable. There's really little to no social mobility for those who escaped slavery, but those characteristics refer to almost all Western hemispheric slavery introduced by Europeans. It's not a distinctly American thing. And as Pascal points out, the United States isn't necessarily even the best case study for this phenomena, right? Places like Brazil or the Caribbean would be better. So like Pascal said, I agree. I mean, slavery is central to understanding U.S. history, to getting the U.S. experience, but we've already started off with a really bad methodological argument to make that point. So that's what I would say.
I found this. I found this in the World Socialist website. I think Pascal shared this with us on this chat. The arguments advanced by Hannah-Jones are A, that the establishment of the United States was a counter-revolution whose primary purpose was the protection of slavery against the danger posed by a British-led emancipation movement. B, that Lincoln was a racist and that the Civil War therefore was unrelated to the fight to abolish slavery. C, that the African Americans have fought alone in the face of relentless racism based on the universally popular doctrine of white supremacy. And D, racism and slavery are the essential elements of American exceptionalism, and therefore, and most important of all, E, all of American history is to be understood as the struggle between the white and black races. The driving forces of American history are not objective socioeconomic processes that give rise to class conflict, but rather eternal and suprahistorical racial hatreds.
Now, there's something I got to interject here because there's something here that's ridiculously historical. When the argument being made that racism and slavery are fundamentally a part of the narrative of American slavery, American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism is a concept that isn't even introduced into the lexicon of American thought until after World War II. In other words, American exceptionalism becomes a way in which the liberal democratic establishment starts to reconcile America's global force in the world with the fall of Europe after the defeat of Nazi Germany and Japan as a global power. So to make the argument that slavery reconciles with American exceptionalism is literally ahistorical. I mean, the professor can correct me if I'm wrong. Am I incorrect in terms of my assessment of how American exceptionalism becomes, starts to develop in the American psyche?
I mean, I would say that you have seeds of it, but before then, I mean, in a lot of ways, America is kind of born with the kid brother syndrome, right? It's trying to make itself distinct from Europe, really from the beginning. And you have significant moments. For example, in 1890, the U.S. Census Bureau declares the frontier closed, and so all of a sudden you have people figuring out, well, what does it mean to be the United States if there's no longer an expanding frontier? World War I, Woodrow Wilson says we're going to war with Germany to make the world safe for democracy. He's very much a progressive who imagines an international new order with the U.S. leading. So the phrase and sort of the modern take on American exceptionalism, I think you're right as far as when it sort of reaches full germination, but I would say the seeds were there for quite a while before that.
Now, I did want to ask you guys about this. I don't know if the professor has read or if is familiar with Gerald Horne's work. He's not too far from you I believe he's at the University of Houston. But he wrote a book calling it The Counter-Revolution of 1776. I don't know if you've read it, Pascal, but you might know of it.
I'm familiar with it. I've read another one of his books, but I did not read that particular book. And I'm very familiar with the arguments, though.
So, in this whole point that this is a counter-revolution, I mean, part of the counter-revolution that he writes about is also the ability to take land. If, the crown is saying, you got to stop taking all this we're tired of giving you all this money to take this goddamn Indian land. Like, we gave you a line to cut the shit out, man. And so that's also a big part of that book about 1776. It's not just simply slavery. It's also the taking of native land. But to that point, though, as it being a counter-revolution, how do you feel about that, Professor Graham?
As far as it being a counter-revolution?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Horne is saying in the book that the British had planned to terminate their plantation slavery economy in the West as a result of slave revolts that were happening in the Caribbean that were threatening the life of the plantation system. And as a consequence, the U.S. Revolution, the quote unquote founders of the United States, the revolutionary Minutemen and all of those like revolted against Great Britain in order to preserve the plantation system. So that, in other words, when they say the counter-revolution of 1776, is that it wasn't a revolutionary process based on individual liberty, but to preserving the actual oppressive institution of slavery.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the danger of that read is it kind of reads back the Confederacy into the colonies, right? I mean, by the time they got the Civil War, the Confederacy is not just a society that happens to have slaves. It is a slave-based society, economically, politically, socially, culturally. It needs the institution to survive as it is. In 1776, you have a significant amount of slavery, and no doubt, for some elites, especially in the southern colonies, no doubt the threat of slavery is real. And certainly the proclamation line of 63, which cuts off Western lands, pisses off a lot of people. But but you've got to account for how 13 different colonies come together and together declare their independence. And ultimately, what they're really pissed off about is they're not being given the political rights they think they're entitled to as members of the British Empire. And certainly part of that has to do with the threats of slavery. But to me, this is really where not only the counter-revolution narrative, but especially 1619 starts to break down. Is the revolution is such a complex thing that if you insist on using one lens, you're going to distort it. You just are. So I'm not going to say there's no role there, but I don't think it's a sufficient lens to understand the revolution as a whole at all. I mean, this is part of the debate too, right? That 1776 is having with 1619 is when the founders write things like "all men are created equal." What the hell do they actually mean, right? But we don't want to. I think it's a mistake to read the revolution without at least the potential, the seed of very real revolution, if nothing else, because there's no more king, right? That in itself makes it revolutionary. That answers your question or not, but that might be a starting place.
I mean, I think it's I think it's a lot more complex than one simple narrative, right? And it feels like the 1619 project is trying to reckon with maybe, and I'm not saying this in any sort of defense of anything. Maybe I'm playing a mild case of devil's advocate here, but growing up in the public school system here in the great state of California, slavery is a chapter in a book, and then there's Reconstruction, and then there's Martin Luther King, and everything's kind of better again. Right. And so I think a lot of people see slavery through either the lens of roots. It's the actions of bad people, or 12 years a slave or something like that, right? And this feels like it's some sort of project to delve a little deeper into the history, but it does feel a little ahistorical, even in the little bit that I did get to read.
Yeah, I mean,
Reconstruction.
I think the fundamental issue is not that the assertion that slavery is central is wrong, right? The case is overstated. It's overstated through some bad methodology and through some sort of reductionist perspective. To me, I don't think the project is useless. I think it's reductionist and overstates the case.
Well, I think part of the problem also is that when you say that all of American history can be reduced to anti-Black racism, you fail to realize, well, what about Native American genocide? What about where the Chinese were treated? What about the treatment of the working class? Well, I mean, there's a whole, it seems to me to be premised on leveraging a certain kind of guilt based in one particular narrative that is about leveraging a grievance, and that it seems more about leveraging grievance than about actually recounting actual history. And if that's what you want to do, well, it's fine, but don't act like this is a document that's about history. For me, I'm not trying to absolve or, excuse the pun, whitewash American history. I mean, this is I've stated on this show many times what is egregious about the nature of this country from its history to today. But I think that part of the problem of saying that racism is what's central to America is that it divorces the ultimate reality that racism and slavery were about the economic engine of capitalism in the United States. And that racism was used as a justification to create an economic order rooted in extraction of labor from Blacks as slaves and extended in a Jim Crow society through plantation and domestic labor up until the 60s, rooted in the system of capitalism. And so when I hear, people say that the most important thing to the development of America was racism and slavery, I would say the most important thing to the development of America was capitalism. And that if slavery was not profitable, particularly the enslavement of Africans from the African continent, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point, right? You want to get the cart before the horse, right? They aren't racist and decide they're forced to enslave people because they're racist. Their racism, while pre-existing, is really used to justify the profitable labor system. And to add to your point, right, often the way racism develops both before and after the revolution at different places is racism develops because the wealthy white elites have to somehow stop the very natural alliance between poor whites and slaves, indentured servants, Native Americans, right? It's really, racism is in many ways about suppressing what we might anachronistically call a class consciousness from developing at key parts in U.S. history.
I did want to read this excerpt from your writing, and there is a link in the show to Dr. Graham's blog, which I actually did enjoy. He gave me a kind of a warning before I posted something. He's like, "Well, I write this for my family, and they're kind of the opposite of me, and I try to make it easy." I was like, "No, that's perfect. I think a lot of people will appreciate this. It's not academic speak. It's really simple and plain." But this is actually an excerpt from the 1619 Project, and I wanted definitely get Pascal's take on this. This will probably make him feel like when I play Umar Johnson videos. Slavery is sometimes referred to as the country's original sin, but it is more than that. It is the country's very origin. Out of slavery and the anti-Black racism it required grew nearly everything that has truly made American exceptional. The goal of the 1619 Project is to reframe American history by considering what it would mean to regard 1619 as our nation's birth year. Doing so requires us to place the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the story we tell ourselves about who we are as a country.
I've never heard the F-bomb through an eyebrow before. That was pretty impressive.
So Professor Graham, you wrote that in the beginning?
No. That's from the 1619 Project.
Oh, I was about to say, okay, you can see that. That's why I was confused. I was like,
losing my connection. What's happening, Pascal?
I was thinking, what?
No. There is no endorsement. That is a mere quote from a primary source.
That he's quoting this. I prefaced that by saying, I said, that's why you're going to get mad.
I mean, the whole thing, right, is that when you say that, how do you reconcile the populist era in the 1880s when you had white Southern sharecroppers and Black Southern sharecroppers really working together to try to challenge the Southern bourbon economy and overturn capitalism? How do you reconcile that with, the socialists and communists in the early 20th century who were working to challenge, the worst vicissitudes of American capitalism, asking for, day, 5 days a week and 2 days off? How do you reconcile that with, anarchists like Lucy Parsons? How do you reconcile that with people like Hubert Harrison, who rooted their understanding of what the plight of what Black people were facing in America with the way in which capitalism was extracting their labor and exploiting their labor, and also had no problem in working with whites to do that? How do you deal with the Pinkerton riots? How do you, if you reduce American history to simply the exploitation of Black people? I mean, there are whole classes and groups of people who have been, horrendously exploited in this country, who aren't Black as well, whose exploitation was a fundamental part of the development of American capitalism also. I'm not trying to say that we should mitigate the role in race that race and slavery plays in America. It is definitely foundational. It's definitely important. But at the same time, I think it's beyond myopic to try to make it seem like there's nothing else that animates or resonates with American history except that particular phenomenon.
It reminds me a little bit of the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? Where the whole movie is like, you give me any word and I'll tell you how that word has a Greek root, right? And it just gets absurd over it. It's a running gag in the movie, and that And that kind of feels like a running gag here, right? You tell me anything in American history, anything at all, and I will show you how it goes back to slavery and racism. And it doesn't work. Like you said, Pascal, it's beyond myopic, right? It's just silly.
I mean, first of all, let's understand that after the Revolutionary War, there isn't even full white male suffrage in America until what, the Jacksonian presidency.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people fail to realize that, there's a period of time in America where we have white indentured servants. We have Bacon's Rebellion. We also have a time after the Revolutionary War for several years that unpropertied white males are unable to even vote or democratically participate in American society at all. We have not only, again, the Native American genocide, we have the fact that women are not participating politically at all, or in many cases unable to even own property. So I have a serious, I understand the centrality of race and slavery and racism to the American narrative, but to reduce all of American history to this kind of ontological physics-like battle between blacks and whites, what exactly is American imperialism about? What exactly is World War II about? What is World War I about?
Well, let me. One of I think Teresh just shared this with us from one of your people, Pascal's at DMS. Is it Daryl
Michael
Scott? In an interview about the 1619 Project, he's asked the question about the myth of it, and he says, "What really happened, or even what about other farmers or other myths? For instance, the Atlantic world. Once you start making worlds, you are making myths. You are circumscribing the world for your purposes, and you're tracing origins. So there are various ways scholars tell their tale. 1619 could have been a set of debates about that, but all of the other perspectives lost out. All of these critiques fell to the wayside in the traditional way that they do. You get a debate between white liberals and their allies and white conservatives, and everything in America reduces to race and slavery. That's culture war stuff." Do you guys feel the same way?
This project has become culture war stuff. There's no question about that. Daryl Michael Scott is a historian. I disagree with him on various things, but I think his position on the 1619 Project being a political argument, it's a polemic. All right, it's a polemical argument as opposed to actual history. And I have no problem with making polemical arguments, but don't root them in being history. And it's quite obvious that the polemical argument of the 1619 Project is that Black people built America, and our struggle is the solely important struggle in this country, and we are owed a debt. I understand and don't deny that, but to act like Black people are the only people who struggle in this country, the only people who had wealth extracted to them, or that wealth was extracted from all Black people the same way, and that there weren't classes of Black people who were facilitating the exploitation of other Black people, is very, very, very important.
Well, we have a professor in the chat as well, Professor Kelly Dietz, who's actually a historian as well. She actually said, I just had it, damn it. She said 1619 did get the nation talking about slavery, even though it was sloppy. It sparked a conversation that was long overdue. Do you guys feel that same way, that it does spark somewhat of an important conversation, or do you think that it was just done so poorly that the conversation is muddied?
I don't find value in having a conversation based on something that's questionable in terms of its truth. A conversation. Like I'm one of those people that like conversations on race, conversations. Like, I want to hear policy. I want to hear wealth redistribution. I'm not trying to hear a conversation. Now, some people believe that such conversations are important. Okay. I think that if conversations don't translate into actually policy or economic reorganization of capital. It's just talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most problematic thing is really the framing essay at the beginning, right? And I've read the other essays, and some of them are actually they're pretty interesting and they're pretty well done, and they show obvious evidence of interacting with existing scholarship and even talking to historians and other kinds of scholars. I think what's hard is that it could have started a good conversation if it had just been honest about what it was, right? Like, this is a thought experiment, or this is a polemic, or hey, let's just imagine for a second that we only use slavery, or we only talked about slavery. What could we learn, right? But it came out both guns barreling as if it was a truth that was rectifying a lie. So I think to me, that it loses its credibility to be a good conversation starter, at least in the places where that conversation needs to start, right? I mean, those of us here who are critiquing it, like, we don't need to be convinced that slavery was bad and slavery was central, all these things. But for the people that you actually want to try to talk about these things, I can't hand out that essay to family or friends and have any kind of conversation, quite frankly. So,
I mean, listen, I'm interested in the middle ground here. I agree with Jason's salient earlier point that the history of American slavery and the history of the role of race in American society, like most of America's, is not told at all, and it's not told effectively with the desire of exposing truth. There's no question about that. So sure. I do believe that there should be an attempt to write and document aspects of American history that do not, echo with, clapping and waxing rhapsodic about the Declaration of Independence and all that, to show things that have actually been done in this country and how this country, developed its power as an empire. Mm-hmm. So, in that regard, an article that was trying to demonstrate the importance of slavery to the history of the United States, I think could have been done, and I wouldn't have had a problem with that. But the problem I have with this 1619 project is that you're making a polemical argument, but you're using definitive historical tone to say this is the history, that's it. And I'm like, number one, you're a historian, and number two, you're just making a polemical argument, and the history in itself that you're making is actually factually incorrect. So I'm not one of these people who are like, oh, America's a wonderful country. How dare you even talk about slavery? That was just an afterthought. That had nothing to do with the development. No, I don't believe that at all. I think it was very integral. I mean, even Marx, there was a quote in that World Socialist website piece by Marx, where even Marx talks about how the importance of the extraction of wealth by African labor and the murder of the Aboriginals or the Native Americans was the development of American capitalism. So I do believe that story needs to be told, and I do believe that it needs to be told more effectively with more truth, without concern about how we taint the image of American exceptionalism. But I also don't think that we need to come with this kind of like mythological kind of narrative of just like, this is what it is, and everything was about that, and that's the end. I mean, it's really kind of cartoonish and ahistorical and anti-intellectual.
Yeah, I'd sign off on all that for sure.
Oh, sorry, I forgot I was blacked out. Well, let me read this Marx quote then, actually, from this World Socialist article, and I will post this in the chats. The discovery of gold and silver in America, the exportation, enslavement, and entombment in mines of the Aboriginal population, the beginning of the conquest and looting of the East Indies, the turning of Africa into a warren for the commercial hunting of black skins, signaled the rosy dawn of the era of capitalist production. These idyllic proceedings are the chief moments of primitive accumulation. On their heels treads the commercial war of the European nations with the globe for theater. If money, according to Aguirre, comes into the world with a congenial blood stain on one cheek. Capital comes dripping from head to foot from every pore with blood and dirt. That's from Marx.
So Marx was against capitalism. Is that what I'm reading?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say.
Okay, I don't want to speak for the guy, but it sounds like he's good.
Well, isn't that the whole thing about Cedric Robinson's book, that Marx didn't understand
primitive
slavery,
accumulation and slavery and
racism? He didn't understand
colonialism.
race.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that there are plenty. As I emailed Cedric Johnson, not Robinson, Cedric Johnson. He was like, there are plenty of quotes by Marx where he thoroughly explains the role of primitive accumulation, slavery, even foreign conquest to the development of American capitalism. So
If Cedric Robinson emails you back,
Cedric Johnson.
Yeah, no, but if Robinson emails you back, your computer's haunted. Just throwing that out there. Oh God, sorry, I lost my train of thought where we are.
Well, I think that something that we should talk about is that what exactly does the 1619 Project mean in the context of the quote unquote Great Awokening? What exactly does this posture of taking down statues, of canceling certain figures because of things that they've said? How does this fit into that politics or that discourse? What is the larger what are the larger currents that we're seeing here that are manifest? I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'd like to hear what the chat thinks.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I had to handle the dog. Real life here. I don't have a production assistant. So answer the question, Professor.
Gosh, well, I mean, it's a great question. It's a big question for as late as it is for me over here without coffee. I mean, I think maybe one place to jump in could be the characterization of Abraham Lincoln in the opening essay. Maybe we could talk about that. That would be helpful. This goes to the problem of this being ahistorical, right? Because this is clearly taking shots at Lincoln, and the problem is that she freezes Lincoln in 1862. And in 1862, yeah, so Lincoln has been opposed to slavery for a long time, but he's not opposed to it in the sense that he believes in full racial equality, right? And in fact, the solution to the problem is colonization. This is very well known, but the problem is that Lincoln, like most people in history, kind of evolve over time to whereby at the time that Lincoln's assassinated, a couple of weeks before he dies, he's giving a speech in which he basically says, look, I actually think I would be okay with limited Black male suffrage as long as it was like either Union veterans or, in his words, some of the very intelligent ones. Now, is that where we would like him to end up? No, it's not. But it's not where he was in 1862. And I think that's one of the issues I have with the way that we're trying to use history to beat each other up in the culture war, is it freezes people randomly in ahistorical ways and then reduces them to that one moment. And you just can't, I don't know, history is sloppy and complicated and messy, and it makes really shitty bumper stickers, quite frankly. But if we're going to do the hard work, we have to do the hard work.
Someone is asking in the chat what they say. They're asking what exactly is the Great Awokening.
The Great Awokening.
But I want to hear what Pascal says about the Great Awokening.
The Great Awokening is the rise of this kind of woke racial grievance. Liberals acting like they're sympathetic about race, and combined with cancel culture, and just taking down those statues and taking Aunt Jemima off bottles, taking Uncle Ben off rice boxes. All of the post-George Floyd symbolic racial actions, I wouldn't say actions, but activities that take place in order to seem like we care about race and black people.
Someone says 1619 is accurate. Ask Gerald Horn. I don't think any of us are saying that there's lies, so to speak. Are you guys saying that it's a lie? I wouldn't say it's a lie. I mean, slavery did happen. Ships arrived in 1619. I don't think.
No, I mean, to me, it reminds me of like reading an essay from my college students. And what I would say is, you have some really good points in here. You overstate your case. You need to consider these other things to help round out what you're trying to say. To me, that's the issue. It's not a bad per se. It's not a lie. It's overstated, polemical, myopic. Those are the words that Pascal has used. I think they're really good words to explain what the problem with it is.
I mean, also Gerald Horn. People keep quoting Gerald Horn, and they definitely leave out the fact that in his book, which is in my car, I should go pull it out. The Counter-Revolution of 1776. He definitely talks about Washington, a land speculator, wanting more land. That's what he fucking does, and him taking over native land fills up a lot of that book. So the 1619 project, from what I've read from it, it doesn't really get into that unless I miss some essays that they have whole chapters about taking over native land.
Kelly Dietz lets us know that this was written by journalists, not historians. More reason to dislike it.
That was a problem that the World Socialist website had. That was a problem that Daryl Michael Scott had with it. Even our professor here, Professor Graham, pointed that out, that this was written by journalists, not historians, that historians definitely had some issues with it. I can't remember in one of these articles I was reading, one historian was actually kind of pushed out of the loop because they were trying to call out some of the problems, much like Professor Graham is saying, like, hey, this is a good point you got here, but you need to round out a little bit more.
Yeah.
So yeah, somebody finally says Gerald Horn does that. Phoenix just came in. Better say hello to everybody. You're on TV.
Hi.
He's got a truck. Phoenix, did you read the 1619 project with me? Remember
that is a sweet truck, man.
Remember we were reading the 1619 project and you told me to shut up? He didn't like it. He didn't like it. I did.
It's a terrible Dr. Seuss book. So
I have to read this stuff and sometimes I have to put him to bed. So 2 birds, 1 stone.
Someone says Nicole Hannah-Jones is not trying to hear about poor people and the inherent contradictions of capitalism. I agree with that.
I mean, none of that stuff really touches on capitalism. And it definitely talks about, oh God, at first I thought it just dealt with that initial time period. And I didn't realize it went kind of throughout. And the whole time never touches on capitalism. And it really did become kind of this favorite in a almost PMC circles, right? Black PMC circles. It felt like peak Obama wokeism is how I look at it. That's what I call it. What do you guys call it?
Yeah. Yep.
Someone says no one cares about these neo-Marxist views on NHJ. What's NHJ?
The central thesis that slavery was endemic exclusively to the United States and original to the United States is correct. That's a complete and total fallacy.
I mean, there was more slaves in Brazil. There's more black people in Brazil than there is here. It's just silly. But that goes back to what I was saying about, the American school system and the way we view slavery. Like, I think we only understand slavery as Europeans taking slaves from the western coast of Africa and bringing them to Jamestown, and that's it. Like, no one understands how any people of color landed in Hispaniola or South America. Like, that shit is just
only
crazy.
4%. Only 4% of the Africans that were totally brought over to the Americas during the transatlantic slave trade came to North America. The majority went to Brazil and the Caribbean. That's a fact.
with brutal conditions. There's no black PMC. It's the handful of us that they let have jobs. Stop trying to adapt YT phrases that don't apply to us to just fit in. What's a YT phrase?
White.
Oh, white?
Professional managerial class.
Oh, that's how you write white? Oh, that's whack. Sorry, homie. I'm not really feeling
You should
it.
read Preston Smith's books and tell me there's no professional managerial class about how the black petite bourgeoisie helped facilitate Jim Crow segregation in Chicago.
Tapwater, I'm starting to think that you might be Umar Johnson trolling. I think you might be on some Hotep shit trying to troll. It's not going to work out real well for you trying to troll over here on some Hotep shit. Especially because you're not saying anything about the 1619 project that is making me go, well, that's a good point. I mean, how does it? So I want to read this part of your essay, Professor. When you talk about the the 1776 project, you say the 1776 Commission's report directly targets not only the claims 1619 project, but also a broad range of perceived social ills that the report's authors believe are threatening the health of the nation. In doing, it challenges the 1619 project's claims about the origins of the United States. And this is from the 1776 project. The Commission's first responsibility is to produce a report summarizing the principles of the American founding and how those principles have shaped our country. That can only be done by truthfully recounting the aspirations and actions of the men and women who sought to build America as a shining city on a hill. An exemplary nation, one that protects the safety and promotes the happiness of its peoples as an example to be admired and emulated by nations of the world that wish to steer their government towards greater liberty and justice. That is from the 1776.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, oh, go ahead, Pascal. I'm sorry.
He's reading this fool in the chat. That's what he's doing. I can see it.
Yeah, it's really kind of.
You want to address this 1619 project got white leftists mad because they.
I mean, I know a lot of black leftists, a lot of black historians who I know, black people who are not even left. Darrell Michael Scott is not a leftist. He's a black liberal, and he thinks the 1619 project is a complete ahistorical nonsense. He's a historian who teaches at Howard University. Barbara Fields is black, and she also teaches at Columbia University. She's a historian, and she thinks the 1619 project is absolute trash. So just because you got you're tap dancing on your Gerald Horn love doesn't mean that there aren't other black scholars who've been writing about history who be like, no, this is not correct history.
Now, do you want to address that 1776 thing, or are we going to keep going back and forth with this person?
No, I mean, it's just again. The argument is not that slavery was not essential or racism was not essential to the development of American society. That would be a lie. Of course it was essential to the development of American society. But to act like racism and slavery was something that was particular only, and this is a quote from Miss Hannah Jones, like nowhere else in the world, is absolutely false.
I agree. Professor?
Yeah, I mean, I think whoever Tapwater is, it's a misrepresentation of what we're saying, right? No one on this podcast has ever once minimized slavery. It is central to the understanding of how the U.S. develops over time. So is racism. What we're saying is the case is overstated, that it's reductionist to try to pin all that on there, right? I mean, I said earlier, one of the reasons that many colonial elites are interested in independence is protecting slavery, but that's not a sufficient reason to explain the revolution.
I got to address this because this is kind of cartoonish. This is what Tapwater says. Slavery was the issue, not capitalism. What was slavery about? What was slavery about? He's literally saying to talk about capitalism related to slavery. This is the height of race reductionism. I'm glad he exposed himself. This is one of those folks who was like, capitalism is irrelevant. It's all the evil stuff that the white people did to us. Why did they do it? If black people were not valuable economically, would they have been imported to the United States? If it didn't grow the economic condition of the United States to have black labor for free, would they have been brought to the United States? This is sophistry. It's nonsense. You can't divorce slavery and racism from capitalism in America.
Right. Racism is about justifying the seizure of indigenous land and black labor. That's really what it is. And if you want to expand that, you can say Chinese labor. You could say whatever. Right?
I mean, one of those professional managerial class type Negroes who's basically happy with 6-figure plus income, but doesn't like the fact that we're challenging capitalism. He just wants to be able to go to his white boss and say, "Hey, I want a promotion because you're mean to the Negroes."
I don't know what color this person is, so if I don't know you in real life, I can't talk about who the hell you is on the internet. So you can tell me anything you want on the internet. You can tell me you are black, a woman. It doesn't matter what you say on the internet until we meet in real life. Motherfucker, I don't know you. So let me not say motherfucker. I just don't know you. So we will assume that you say you are a person of color, that you are a person of color, but just because you say it on the internet, it's hard for me to buy. Oh, okay. So Tapwater says, look at how the Polish and 1687 Europe has always been at edge on North African expansion.
Oh God, man.
What?
So basically, are you saying that race is like this magical thing that everything revolves around race and racism,
it's
and everything is white supremacy? Gotcha.
It's like earth science. It's like rainwater.
It feels like that's what this is. Okay, this chat has become ahistorical.
And quite frankly, hysterical at this point. I'm kind of over it, but
how is the 1619 project ahistorical when 99% of people can't cite that Dunmore's proclamation was referenced by Jefferson in his draft of the American Revolution?
That's not even a coherent argument, right? I mean, how can this not be bullshit when people don't know this isn't bullshit? That doesn't even make. It's not even. I can't.
Well, can you explain what he's trying to say a little bit, Professor, for those that don't know?
Okay, so what he's talking about, I assume, with Dunmore's proclamation is that basically Dunmore issues a freedom to any slaves that can come and join his camp right during the war. He's basically trying to get the slaves to come over and help the British cause. But the problem is like saying most people don't know that might be fair, but that doesn't somehow like justify that this is now historical because people don't. It's like saying 3 + 3 is 7 because the sky is blue. I don't know what the hell to do with that. The logic of that statement. I mean,
Pascal, stop reading the chat, goddammit. We got a show to do. You let this shit get too spicy for you.
Man.
You got spiced out. This is what happens when you hit 1,000 subs, y'all. We need to be like, hey, real talk. We need to be like them people that don't even read chats, that they super chats. Like, bitch, if you ain't giving me $5, I cannot see the bullshit that you write.
Right. This you need sponsors. So this kind of stuff doesn't happen.
You got to pay to hate me.
That's right. Subscription hate. That's the future, man. Subscription hate. That's where it's at.
Oh, you done pissed off Professor Dietz. Don't piss her off because she's supposed to be on the show this weekend.
Okay. All right.
I look forward to seeing her on the show.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. I think this shit is fucking hilarious. I before we got on, when we were talking about doing this show, we didn't think, you never know the shows that are going to have a big response from people. Sometimes it's a guest, sometimes it's a topic. When I threw this topic out, fucking Doug Lane from Zero Books got all upset on the Facebook with us. I bet Pascal would call Gerald Horne's 2014 book Pork Chop History when he's chasing white progressives instead of listening to black leftists who called out ignorant white progs out. Well, Tapwater, Gerald Horne was on this show.
Yeah, he was on this show. And one,
yeah. And
how many white?
Yeah.
Do you? this is absurd, man.
And I referenced that book. I also referenced his book on the 65 Watts riots, and I referenced his book on Paul Robeson.
I chase. So Jason, how often have you seen me chase white progressives? How does that happen?
Chasing them in what way? Like he was chasing ass?
No, I'm talking about like chasing them for.
Hey, Katie Helper.
You a mess, man.
Over there fucking hitting up Anna Kasparian's DMs.
You got jokes, man.
Oh shit! No, you actually don't chase. You don't chase white people. I actually book those appointments. I say, Pascal, you have to talk to at least 2 white people, so we don't get banned. Oh fuck! I'm so sorry. What is Tapwater saying? Tapwater, you are making me laugh so hard. I farted. Gerald Horne actually is upset he wasn't directly referenced more by NHJ. Listen to his interviews. Maybe. I mean, I think Gerald Horne has some really awesome shit to say. I rather enjoy his talks.
And just because Gerald Horne wrote a book doesn't mean he's definitively the ultimate authority on a historical event. Gerald Horne could be wrong. Shocking.
It's disappointing to see black leftists adopt white supremacist Dunning School interpretation of 1776.
The Dunning School is about the Civil War. What are you talking about, man?
Dude, we just fucking we referenced Gerald Horne's 1776 counter-revolution on this show as a talking point. Bruh, you can't just make shit up. Because then hoes like you go to fucking, and I said hoes like you go to fucking Twitter and then talk all this hoe shit about who we are and what we said. So don't start doing hoe shit in the chat. This is a hoe free zone.
No one has denied, even once, that slavery and westward land expansion were important to why the revolution happened. No one has even
I think
once.
that he has a problem with the fact that we're not clinging with Gerald Horne's counter-revolutionary argument. And by the way, none of us has ever said that we agree with it or disagree with it at all. I've never made a definitive statement on that particular aspect. I'm very aware of Gerald Horne's narrative about the counter-revolutionary argument. I'm also aware that there are many historians who do not believe that there is a salient argument for the reason behind the Revolutionary War. I am not a professional historian, so I'm not trying to say Gerald Horne is right or wrong. What I am saying, though, is that there are plenty of people who are professional historians who find that argument questionable. That's all I'm saying. And that's not even by the way, at no point in my critique of the 1619 project did I ever say that's my primary problem. The primary critique that I've had of the whole project, which is totally and factually false, is that plantation slavery is something exclusive and original to the United States, particularly when we are in a continent, we're in a hemisphere when it existed 100 years in other places before the U.S. even engaged in the action. Making it some kind of purely American phenomenon is factually incorrect.
Which Gerald Horne never says.
Exactly. He couldn't say.
Gerald Horne never says that. So, I don't know. Maybe you didn't read all the 1776 counter-revolution. Maybe you read the footnotes. Maybe you just watched a bunch of YouTube videos. I mean, they're addictive. We've all fallen down those rabbit holes and then lied and said we read the book.
I mean, how many?
Laughing because he knows.
I just cited a whole list of black academics who have a problem with 1619 project. This is not simply about white leftists. There are plenty of black academics who think the 1619 project is not good history.
I'm literally reading from a Black academic in Daryl Michael Scott and his critique of the 1619 Project. But I guess he's not Black enough. Like, how Black do you need to be Black enough, Tapwater? Like, let us know the criteria for Black enough. Dashiki Black enough, Ankh Black enough, doctorate Black enough. But is a doctorate from like a Black university? Like, how Black do you have to be?
Anti-Black 1619 critiques by saying dumb shit like, well, white blush and said, duh. Oh. How is the World Socialist website's critique anti-Black? Because they challenged something that a Black person wrote? That makes it anti-Black?
Hotep Black. Queen says Hotep. Y'all are fucked up, man. Adolph Reed wasn't cool with the 1619 Project either. No, he was not. He definitely had some very, 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 very valid critiques of the project that I think Pascal shares. Definitely our good friend.
Daryl Michael Scott is neither a leftist or Marxist at all. He's a straight kind of liberal academic, and he was not a fan.
Adolph Reed is astroturfed by white leftists because Black people don't rock with him. Astroturfed in what sense?
Oh, give me a break.
I mean, you can stop looking at that part of the chat and we can finish this interview. This man is up late. It's past his bedtime. You got to go teach these kids tomorrow via Zoom.
That's right. Gotta go teach some crappy history tomorrow. So I
dare anyone to actually get Adolph Reed to talk to Black people on the street, and white leftists would be shocked how out of step he is. You can say that about Jim fucking Brown.
I mean,
you could say that. Hold on, you could say that about a lot of fucking people. You could say that about Jason Johnson. You can say that shit about Van Jones. You can say that shit about Don Lemon. You can say that shit about any Negro on TV. That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my fucking life. Fucking life.
A Black man that grew up in Jim Crow, Louisiana, who's been writing about Black politics for 50 years, is out of touch with Black people. That's pretty incredible.
That's some ballsy shit to say that you probably would never say to a motherfucker's face. Gotta love the internet. Got to love it. This is why I need a moderator for this shit. I'm sorry, y'all. We were trying to have a nice discussion about the 1619 Project and the importance of before you go, Professor Graham. And you did call this out in your piece that the 1776 Project seems to be the Biden administration put the kibosh on it, but you felt that it was still important to address. Why is that?
I think it's important to address because it someone in the chat referred to it as public history, which I think is a really good way of thinking of it. It's culture. It's a culture war hit job, right? And so as certain demographics within the United States no longer trust expertise, no longer trust or believe in things like truth or facts or that sort of thing, then this that provides a breeding ground for things like the 1776 Project, right? It's a very powerful, very well written for its intention cultural war hit job, right? Here are these radical leftists, and if you read the report, right, it kind of lumps together identity politics and critical race theory and communism and fascism, all this big leftist attack on America, right? And what we have to do is we have to stand up and say America was founded, on only these things, and it's always lived up to those things, or it was sort of kind of doing it, right? I mean, the heart of the project, right, is in its U.S. national narrative, which is that when they said all men are created equal, they really super meant it. And we kind of had some hiccups, but we were really getting there. Martin Luther King almost pulled it off. And then all these assholes, right? All these radicals and these feminists and these jackasses come in and blew the whole thing up. And that's why we're not a unified nation anymore, right? I mean, that is the narrative in the report. And that narrative is nonsense, but it's a very appealing, attractive kind of nonsense. And so I think there is there's value not in giving it legitimacy, like it's a real legitimate argument, but there's a reason to say, look, no, this doesn't work at all. And just because 1619 has problems, it doesn't mean the answer is 1776. I think I said it in chat. Oh, never mind. I'm not sure where I'm going, but yeah. So that's my end rage and rant right there. We'll edit that later. I'll look really smart. It'll be great. So that'll be good.
Pascal, can you unscowl?
I mean, it's again, you are always going to find that professional careerist Negroes are going to be the ones that work the hardest to crush any type of left politics where Black people are involved consistently, because they understand that their racial fatback and biscuits is contingent on them being able to scream the white man while they get their gristle and make sure that other working class Black folk get nothing, because that's how historically it's worked.
It's such an easy thing to blame, right? White supremacy. It's just an easy thing to blame. And that's why it's frustrating, because if anybody watched the show we did Thursday with Professor Preston Smith, we started the show off with this video. Pascal's like, Jay, man, I got this great video. It's a bunch of upper middle class Black people in Los Angeles talking about the fact they don't want these country Negroes moving into their neighborhood, fucking up their good shit. They have been accepted by society, and they don't want these people. I believe they say these people.
They literally say
they say these people, So they're gonna make a Pascal scowl emoji now.
Pascal, that's great. I don't understand why you guys think the scowl. That's actually my natural facial demeanor. Maybe I got
He was reading. Look, everybody. The professor and Pascal are reading the chat because the way I have the screen set up, it's you see it too much. But it helps get people engaged. And the reason why I like it, I'll tell you the reason why I like it, and I'll tell you the reason why I read these comments. And maybe you guys heard me say this before, but there's a lot of new people watching for the first time. And it's the first time we had the professor on here. I used to play music before the lockdown and toured all over anywhere I could go in the world, and loved the interactions after the show with people. And this is as close as I'm going to get with those interactions is this chat. And that's why we read them. That's why we respond to them. And that's why we try to work together. And it's also a very communal vibe, and it definitely helps the conversation, I think, when the chat is constructive. And someone came in and tried to be a little bit destructive. But one thing I don't like doing is shutting people down that just don't agree with me. I think we can have disagreements and be civil about it, but it comes to a point where people just don't want to be civil and just want to be right. And that's kind of the nature of the internet. So the show exists on the fucking internet. So I know that every so often there's going to be people that don't understand the community that we're trying to cultivate here, which is one of like some sort of understanding where we can have disagreements or even be heated. There's people that send me messages, and sometimes we go back and forth, and sometimes it gets heated. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that, hey, man, we see this. We want a bigger left project. We want more people to come to this party so we can actually have some real power. So we want to deconstruct things that could be somewhat problematic. We want to talk about things like the 1619 Project. Call out the problems of it, right? So we want to call out the problems of the 1776 Project, because part of this is supposed to be education as well. But we can't do it if cats are on here trying to on some silly shit, trying to get the best chat dunk, Twitter dunk. I don't really get that shit. I've never existed in a world of virtual clowning people. I've existed in a world of real clowning people, and sometimes those people slap the shit out of you. So I just try not to be that guy. And on that note, Professor. Somebody just said a message they want to moderate. Yes, if you want to moderate the show, please moderate the show. It would make my life a hell of a lot easier.
You got someone volunteering to be a moderator?
I would make my life a hell of a lot easier. You have no idea how much easier my life would be if someone helped out with moderating the show. Send me a message. You guys know where to find me. My Twitter DMs are wide open. My Facebook Messenger is open. I've put the email up before. If not, I'll put it up again so you guys can see it. If you want to do that, I would be very, 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 very grateful. But Professor, other than clowning the 1619 project, what else are you doing?
Man, I'm just trying to survive teaching in a pandemic with 2 children. That's what I'm up to these days. That's about it.
That's not light.
Hard job.
No,
do they run in on your lessons?
They have at times, yeah, but they're really cute. They look like their mom, which helps a lot. So it works out okay, and it gives me a human side for they wrap my department chair. Like, oh, he's got a family. I probably shouldn't just shit on him to his boss for no reason. So it's kind of nice. Between Zooming and the and the stimulus checks, having kids is starting to pay off finally. It's been great. So.
Oh, did you guys get stimulus? Did everybody get a stimulus check?
I haven't gotten mine yet, but it's coming.
I'm not going to get one because I owe the government too much money. We're not going to get into that. That's a whole other show.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be like a true Hollywood story behind the music show. Pascal.
Yes, sir.
What have you got going?
Me, working on writing, man. I'm working on writing and trying to knock out 5 chapters before the summer of this book. That's
nice.
That's where I'm into right now. And I just feel like, it's a weird time politically right now in the country. It's just like I feel like we're in a kind of weird transition where we're coming up on the 90 days of the Biden administration. We've got this, stimulus bill out and everything, and Trump is out of office, but I feel like the country's in a very bizarre, weird situation. The pulse of the country is still up in the air in a lot of ways, and
yeah,
a lot of things that need to be figured out.
Professor, were you following anything? And I'll be quick about this. If you weren't, I totally understand because I didn't even hit you with this in our pre-talk about the black farmers that got the money from the Biden bill.
No.
Pascal, do you want to mention that real quick before we go?
From what I do know, that according to the actual stimulus bill signed by Biden, there is an allotment for black farmers who I believe had a certain grievance against the federal, Department of Agriculture over some type of discrimination. And I think Mitch McConnell said it was "quote unquote" reparations. Now I don't know how a compensation for
Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell?
Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham. Okay, Lindsey Graham said it was reparations. So I don't know how compensation for past discrimination is all of a sudden sua sponte becomes reparations, but that's the way the Republicans are framing this outlay that exists in the stimulus plan. But the reactionary posture of the Republican Party in the post-Trump era, I don't think should be surprising to anyone. I think the trajectory that the Republican Party is going on in a while is, they're just, they're going further and further to the right. I'm just worried about what exactly is the political climate going to be when the next election rolls around, and what the economy, if the economy holds up. Hopefully, the coronavirus goes away. It's all up in the air. Jason, what do you think about them? Do you think midterms are going to work in Biden's direction?
You had made a comment a while back that you said Biden is going to do something reparations-y, and he's gonna say this is the most anyone's ever done for you Negroes, and you're gonna fucking deal with it and take it and shut the fuck up. And I kind of had that feeling when I saw that that money put in there for it was farmers of color. It's not just black farmers. It was farmers of color that were actually they weren't able to get loans in the 40s, 60s, 50s, and what did you call it earlier today, Pascal? You didn't call it reparations. You called it something else. We were on
compensation for race past discrimination.
But you called it something.
I don't remember, Jason.
I don't remember either. We were on earlier this morning. Me and Pascal do like 2 hours in the morning on the left flank beds. So we're literally tired. And then the chat got all wild with somebody on here on some silly Hotep shit. And I had to look up and see Pascal scowl and the confused, angry professor the whole time. Because both of them are reading the chat.
Part of that's just parenthood, to be honest. Not even the chat. It's just this anger and confusion is pretty standard these days.
No, Pascal didn't. Oh, there it goes. There's the Jason scowl emoji that they made on Twitch. So can someone make a Pascal unscowl emoji, please? Because that is the face that I see whenever the show starts. It's a very different face when we have our off-air conversations. He smiles, he fucking giggles and shit. But once we get in here and it's showtime, shit is.
Oh man!
Thank you guys very much. Thursday, I'm gonna hit up Kuba and Gene, and we'll have a foreign policy discussion Thursday if you're down. Pascal.
Very much down, very much so.
Saturday, it looks like it's going to be Super Black Saturday, as we have snatched up Paul from Jacobin and Marcus to come on the show. So get ready for Saturday. But thank you guys very much. Sorry about our group explosion on the chat. Someone says Pascal giggles. Yes, he does giggle. He giggles more
all the time on the show.
But I have to like do shit to fuck with you, and then you laugh. So, but before we go, I'm gonna have to do this for this guy, just so he gets what he wants.
Wow, your mom says
say some words, Pascal.
Your mom says she's never seen me smile. That is so untrue.
You don't smile, dude. You do not like smiling. Just deal with it.
I'm not going to say I smile all the time, but I laugh on the show all the time.
Like I've cracked a smile a couple times, once or twice. No,
I've
Professor, he does
the show several times.
He does not smile.
Do some kind of Pascal smile project or something. Good.
Is he smiling?
The centrality of Pascal's scowl, the history of this show is really something to work in.
I gotta find this clip, and this clip is exactly for our person. Sorry.
Where's the clip, man?
I'm trying to find the clip, dude. Hold on. I said this is your job. You're supposed to be entertaining while I look for the clip.
The payoff better be huge.
Horrible job of being entertaining.
What you want me to juggle balls or something, man?
Okay, so thank you guys for watching the show. We are going to leave, and this is dedicated to our good friend Tapwater, who wanted to come in the chat and tell us that we are Black people that don't understand being Black and don't understand white supremacy. But there's one thing I do understand. I do understand who built America, because this man told us.
Oh, good Lord.
Come out.
Ain't build America, black people built America. Chinese ain't build America, black people built America. Jews ain't build America, black people built America. Mexicans ain't build America, black people built America. Anglo-Saxons ain't build America, I built America. So don't talk to me about no damn minority set-asides, because I'm not no damn minority. That's for your immigrants. I was not an immigrant. My ancestors were imported. My ancestors were imported. My ancestors were not immigrants. My ancestors were imports. Remember, you didn't even consider them people. Remember, I am not an immigrant. I am an import. And as an import, there is no other group you can lump me in with. And black people, this is why we got to be unapologetically African.
There you go.
I don't know why
There you
put
go.
that shit.
There you go. That was for our friend. Someone says Tucker has PP all down.
Tucker looks scared, man. He did not look okay.
Carlson looks like that's the most oh shit I've ever seen. And then he goes, yes.
Oh, little racial PTSD for Tucker, man. That's rough.
That's somebody's having connection issues, or my stream is having connection issues.
Uh-oh.
Well, I think we'll have to end it now.